Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the day 3 of Oslo International Acting Festival. Today, we are so happy to have Sarah Tom and Berit Stump with us here today from Gob Squad. Welcome to you. So, Gob Squad is a group from Berlin, or seated in Berlin. And before I start to ask them anything, I would like to make a little introduction why they are here and in this context of acting and acting training. I know that, and I don't know if you have read it, but in our program we called Gob Squad a post-dramatic theater group. In general, I think we can say that this term, post-dramatic, has been used the last 10 till 20 years about forms of theater which have no classical dramatic approach to text, not being occupied by characters or plot in a traditional or like a classical way. So we might say that the effect of the performance, the effect that the performance makes on the audience is more important than, for instance, being truthful to the text or living the text. So the experience of the spectator might be in the center of the performance. I don't know if you guys accept this term, but Hans Thies Lehmann, which wrote the post-dramatic theater, is very often, for instance, mentioning Gob Squad. So it's not my invention. Gob Squad started, as far as I know, in Nottingham. Yes. With German and British artists. For a while now they have been seated in Berlin. Many of the earliest but still performances took place in different locations, site-specific, like offices, car parks and so on. Some of their performances can be called happenings, performance, even video installations or installations, I guess. I would also like to emphasize their use of technology, especially video cameras, which is putting both the performers or the audience in unusual positions, I think we can say. So, Gob Squad consists of artists with very little traditional classical acting training. I think they are most educated in fine art or visual art. And they also develop their performances without an artistic leader, no director. So in many ways, this is not like what we think of when we think of traditional theater. So why would we invite these people to this conference? One of the main reasons is they are clearly a part of contemporary theater today. They are recognized on a very high international level. They have been connected to Volksbühne in many years now. You also were nominated, congratulations, for an American Drama Award. I heard for a couple of days ago or something, weeks.
For what?
the Drama Desk Award for Kitchen.
Oh yeah.
You didn't know?
I don't.
No? Congratulations. That's nice. So their way of working is maybe something very different from what most acting training serves today. But they're still clearly a part of today's aesthetics. This is why it's very important to also see this side and talk about this side. So, to begin with, I want to ask you how you came to work like you did, if you can give like a sort of overall general answer on how you started to work like this and yeah, how this aesthetics develops to begin with. We also have this one if you want to.
Okay, rock star.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the way when we first started working, we were working very much, as you say, site specifically, and this kind of came out at a very practical level. The course that we were taking was an interdisciplinary course, which concentrated on dance, performance, visual arts, and music. And we had a very nice university space, and there was a room a little bit like this one, but it was always being used by everybody, and we could never get into it. So we started working out on the streets and making work site-related in a way. It was a very practical thing to start with.
Lack of space.
Lack of space drove us out onto the streets and to find other spaces to work in. That actually was the first reason why we started making. And actually, in some ways, we felt more at home, of course, in spaces that were familiar to us, because none of us were actually familiar, for example, to a black box space. So to work out in the streets or in offices or in shops were places in which we felt comfortable and already had a sort of physical discourse with, whereas a theatre space was very alien to us. So in some ways we took the easy option.
Somehow it's also still very visible in your theatre performances, I feel. It's almost like you don't accept the framing. You always, you for instance have a video image which is like transmitted to outside, or the opposite. It's like you want to expand or destroy, or you don't accept the theatre space. It's, I don't know.
Yeah, I think in nearly all of our work we try to sort of bring the real world into it somehow. And we do it in many different ways, but we always try to bring an aspect of the so-called reality into it, and work with the special circumstances of a special situation, I would say. So therefore, it's like almost the performances change from night to night, from situation to situation. You know, sometimes the audience plays a crucial part in it, and they are sort of the unknown element, the reality of it. Sometimes we work out in the public space, and then we feed off passers-by, and they bring in this aspect of reality. And sometimes we do it ourselves by, giving ourselves certain tasks that we have to fulfill within a certain amount of time, and we don't know for certain how we will manage to succeed or how we will manage to fulfill them. So there's often, or actually always, an element of improvising with a set of rules and with some given tasks within a sort of real-time situation.
Could you give an example of this?
Yeah, shall we show something?
Shall we show a video?
So maybe
we've just, yeah.
Scott Squad, and I love technology, so of course they have to have a steamer.
Actually, we two are possibly the least technically savvy of the whole group, actually. But we decided that we would show a few video clips just for those people who don't know our work, and in a way to introduce more a topic for us to talk around, rather than just showing our work, as it were. So there's a method in our madness. Go press play.
Well, maybe we quickly explain what the piece is. This is one of our very early pieces. It's called What Are You Looking At? And it's basically the first piece we did within a black box theatre space after we were working on site. So we thought, how on earth can we do that? What can we put into this black box theatre space? So we came with our own environment and sort of treated the theatre or the black box as a site as well. We thought, what is this actually about, the theatre? It's actually about other people looking at other people, doing something, exposing themselves. It's a lot about, presentation and being looked at. So this piece is called What Are You Looking At? And we created this box out of mirrored material, so the performers inside can't see the audience at the other side, which means that the audience can actually come as close as they want and be really like, a meter away from us without us knowing that they are. And that creates a very special environment, of course, for both sides, because we feel very protected in there, and we feel we can, almost like forget the audience and forget this kind of gaze and not being confronted with this. and we can very much be ourselves. And so we really explored this situation, whereas the audience can be in this voyeuristic position as much as they want to. And it's a durational piece that went over like 6 hours. So a whole kind of night where the main task to ourselves was to entertain ourselves with a set of things that we had within this box. It was almost filled like a living room. We had music, we had drinks, we had games.
I think you should press play.
Okay, so it's a very short clip, but basically you see us over the course of this evening in fast forward.
Thanks. Which year is this?
It's 1998. Yeah.
It also reminds me about my associations is also to reality shows and this kind of things, which is.
It was before Big Brother.
You mean Gob's what invented this, huh? You guys.
Someone had to. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to see because it's very, very fast cut, and it's very much like, you know, the aesthetics are now of a kind of video clip. But basically, I think the situation was we had this set of rules that we perform karaoke songs, which we hadn't learned or anything. It was just we played a song, and every kind of 15 minutes we just sang a song. But really like more like you do it in your bedroom, you know, like in front of a mirror, a song you haven't learned, things like that. And the other rule was that whenever the light changed and came on very kind of bright, it went out first and then very bright on. That meant we all froze into some kind of picture, so like a still. And these were the only kind of rules, and amongst everything else, we just, you know, entertained ourselves. We had a party basically, or spent an evening together.
So this is very interesting from the perspective of what sort of acting or performative behavior is this, and which is the topic of this festival. And I'm thinking of one quote which you have on the internet. You say that your performances is not to be just a perfect performer who hides their mistakes, but to take on their own weaknesses and have them become part of the collective performance. So we are talking very often about vulnerability in the art of acting. But it seems like you almost do the highlight want to highlight the weaknesses of you as performances and do this as a part or maybe as a topic of the whole performance somehow sometimes. So could you say something about that? And this also is also a topic about authenticity and reality and this kind of things.
Yeah, I think very much a subject that was being discussed a lot at the time was this authenticity, and it was something that we found easier to experiment with our work rather than to intellectualize. And so and I think we were really confused by it in a way, and in some ways still are, because the whole idea of self and how to be oneself in a performative context is really difficult, because while making this piece, which was all about attempting to be as real as you could be.
Which was the aim of this performance?
Yeah, it was kind of like try to be yourself. And in doing that, you realised how many selves you have. You know, during the, all of a sudden I would be in the box and think, would Berit normally do that, or is she doing that because she's in here? How much of us is, and it was a real constant, battle, and we changed costume a lot, and we were always in these sort of group identities, because Gob Squad being a collective and we're a bit like a big gang. It was like we wanted to see how that influenced us, how we behave when we're together in this constellation is clearly another person to the person I am when I'm at home with my child. Do you see what I mean? And I think it brought up so many things for us, how it was almost really hard to let go. And we experiment, it's one of the reasons it became very durational, because it felt that it took a long time to let go. So maybe for the first couple of hours you're still very self-aware. And also, of course, your image is constantly reflected. But the cowardice in this piece is the fact that we cannot see the audience at all. So in some ways that was our protective shield. And by building this, exactly, really big fat one, we in a way protected ourselves and tried to put ourselves in a safe environment.
But still, I would say that you probably had an awareness someone is looking at you, and I think it's Judith Butler's come up with the term performative identity. I mean, we always have some kind of performative approach. I am now performing the moderator. You are the Gob Squad rock stars being interviews, and they are performing the audience.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's always we always do have performative identity, and somehow I think in our time, probably more than ever. I mean, with Facebook and so on, we disconnect the performative identity even from the body. And you also do this with, I think, technology, with starting to screen the actor on stage without being there and so on. So could you say something more about how you deal with the topic of identity? Is that something that you start to work with when you develop your performances? Is it something that is just in there, or?
God, there's so many topics now that have come up, because I feel we haven't really covered the aspect on failure, which you mentioned first, which I think is very, very massive for us. And I mean, we brought out this reader last year, Gob Squad reader, where we actually, for the first time, tried to gather all our thoughts and on these different aspects on how we work and how we kind of produce our art. And so one chapter in that is actually called On Failure, and it is massively important to us that it's not just about the perfection of showing, like one perfect evening or one perfect character or whatever. It's actually more about constructing and deconstructing something in front of the audience's eyes. So we kind of build on something and actually take it away again and build something new in front of their eyes. So it's almost the process of trying to achieve something. And you see us struggling to get there. And you see the potential of failing and not getting there. Like, you know, in some pieces we set ourselves a task which we don't know from the beginning, are we actually going to fulfill it at the end of the evening? Like in the piece Super Night Shot, where we are trying to find someone in the street to kiss one of the protagonists at the end of the night. It's this live film, so we can then come also to cameras. And we don't know, will we actually find this person within this 1 hour that we have? And we don't know the complete outcome of this evening or of this show. So again, this kind of idea of failure is very important. It's almost something that thrives us to do what we do. And I think the audience sort of feels that as well. And that, you know,
Can I just add, I think that one of the, early on, we recognised that we needed a task to fulfil because we can't act. And if you have a task to fulfill and you genuinely are trying to fulfill it in a dramatic frame, then of course you will see your failures, but also in, of course, many dramatic roles, you see the failure, you know, it's showing the flaws, which of course can be written in a script beautifully by Chekhov, whoever, but, you know, but we show it in a different way. So I think in some ways what we're doing is just showing our humanness in a way without a script, because we don't know how to do that. So we do it like this.
I think most acting methods or directors or actors would say that something has to be on stake.
Exactly.
If it should be interesting
to
to watch.
be a risk.
Yeah, there has to be a risk. So what is there any difference of the way you are risking something on stage, you think, than an actor that is working with a text and in this kind of way?
I guess in some ways the actually outcome of the piece can dramatically change. For example, with Super Night Shot, we had to think of 2 different endings because there's the ending when the premise of the piece is that we go out onto the streets with 4 different cameras, and one of the people acts as like a casting agent, and they literally go around stopping people on the street asking if they will take part in our film, and will they take part in the final scene where they have to kiss a total stranger. 99% of the time we find someone to do this, which was a surprise to us when we conceived the idea. We thought it would be about 50-50. It's actually amazing.
It's Berlin.
No, it's all over the fucking world. It's amazing.
Yeah, we thought this was just here.
It's amazing. We did it in Oslo with a lovely kisser. And we were told we wouldn't. We said, oh no, the people here are too shy. Not true. And but what I wanted to say is, for example, in Krakow, we didn't find a kisser, and it was a tragedy.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful. I mean, I have to say, I love it when it's a tragedy. But you know, it's either a lovely romantic ending or it's a great Greek tragedy. You know, and it was, and so the difference is also in Revolution Now, we send somebody out onto the streets halfway through the show to go and find a member of the public to come back into the space so we can finish the show. That can take between 5 minutes to an hour, which greatly changes the expectations and the feeling in the room with the audience. So I suppose that's the difference, in the sense it can dramatically change the outcome.
Also
Whereas
often,
usually with the script, it usually ends up with the same end.
Also often in terms of, you know, what the audience or passers-by bring in terms of like stories or whatever, that of course is also an element which is unknown to us, and you know, we go with it. We go with what they bring in. Of course, we always have some kind of structural points where we know at this time, whatever happens, we do this. You know, we have a formal language, we have formal like points within the structure that we always come back to. So, you know, sometimes really extreme things can happen out in the street. You know, you can be harassed by someone and actually burst into tears or something. It could happen, and it did happen. But then you always have these kind of fixed points where you come together again in unison. I mean, Super Nitro is quite extreme because you are actually alone in the street as yourself, just yourself with the camera, and only later it's all brought together as one film and as one piece. But still, you feel part of the structure, and that kind of keeps you together somehow. But in the middle, you know, everything can happen. Shall we show a bit of that, just because we talk so much about it?
Do so.
Do it.
Just to help you put it in context. Has anyone seen Super Nitro?
Yes.
Hey, you know what we're talking about.
This is Super Night Shot. 3, 2, 1, go!
Hello, my name is Simon Will, and tonight I will sacrifice myself for the cause. Tonight I will prepare myself for the role of hero.
Okay, guys, we have 55 minutes, so get ready.
Yeah.
Everybody have everything? Yeah. Have your cameras?
Yeah.
Okay, come on, guys, let's make this movie. Come on, let's go. This way. Come on, through here.
Hello, I'm a hero in a film. Do you need a hero? No. No? You don't need a hero? Do you need to cross this road here?
No.
Which way are you going? Are you waiting for the tram?
Can I ride with you?
Yes.
Can you give me a ride? Can I ride on the back, maybe?
Now keep us in shot, please. Oh, yours. Glad to be a service man.
I'm an innocent man. Help me.
What's your name? Rudiger. My name's Elise.
Needs to be more aggressive. Hey, get out of my way! You watch out!
Kann ich mal ganz kurz stören? Ich wollte nur sagen, Simon Will ist in der Stadt und ist das größte Arschloch.
Bikes are rubbish! I'm currently in a movie playing a bad guy. This movie here. And I was wondering if there's anything bad I could do to you. Maybe I could beat you up or something. Yeah, I could like physically assault you.
Das ist Super Night Shot. 3, 2, 1, Action!
This performance consists only of 4 screens on the stage, and probably someone would say that this is not theater art. What do you think about that?
It is something that people say. I have to say on two levels. One, I think that what is happening is that there is a real liveness to it, because it's a bit like a Polaroid unfolding. We've been out on the streets and we've made all this film, and we come back and we press rewind.
So
And then when the audience, and the very last shot, we film the audience as we're coming in. And previously, while we've been out filming, they've all been arriving at the theatre, and then they get told, okay, everybody, you know, Gobsquad are out there, and they give us this massive hero's welcome. And sometimes they're thinking, why am I applauding them? They haven't done anything yet.
The performance starts with the audience standing outside of the
venue,
and
giving us a big hero's welcome.
It's what you saw in the beginning.
So what you actually see in the performance is 2 hours before the performance starts, right?
An hour before the hour,
Yeah, right.
exactly.
Yeah.
We run out of the theatre an hour before the audience arrive, and we come back as they're ready to go and sit down. But they're the last scene of our film, and so they watch the whole film, and then right at the end they see themselves, and it could even be that they've been in the film. Every now and again, somebody who's making their way to the theatre, actually, we've stopped in the street and said, hey, can you help us with that? And they're like, no, I've got to go to the theatre. You know, and this does happen. So in some ways we have 2 audiences. We have the audience, the sort of unknowing audience, who are out on the street, and it becomes a very different piece to them. They have conversations with us, they see this big moment at the end, they see us dancing, it's a very fragmented, but definitely it's definitely an event that happens in the streets around the theatre. I mean, when we did it in Perth, you could really feel that there were lots of people out in the evening. It was a hot summer evening, and it really felt like, after we'd finished filming, it felt like, well, we're done, because we've already had these big crowds around us, watching us already, in a sense. And then we have the audience, the sort of the knowing audience, the audience that paid to come and see us. So in some ways, there are 2 different audiences there as well.
But I still think
the collective experience and the liveness makes it a bit like this. Although I also just have to say, we didn't really care that much when we were making it. I know it didn't really concern us, is this theatre or not?
No.
Really. And it was just that this is what we're making, and we will show it. And I think that's some,
It's I would say that there is a very, very strong theatrical moment when you enter when you enter the theater with the cameras, and I'm standing there and applauding you, realizing what will sit down and realizing, oh, this is the end of the performance.
Yeah, I think there is an incredible amount of liveness still in this. Although it's just a little moment, it makes it so real, and it makes it so obvious that this has just happened now, you know, and even we don't know at that point what happened to the others. And actually, it's like the playing back of those tapes, which are uncut, unedited. So one of the basic rules of the piece is whatever happens to you out there is going to be in the film.
So it's still an improvisation performance somehow, because you're also switching between the 4. The sound is like up and down on the 4 screens,
sound.
And you even add film music in there. So all this editing process is let's say you improvise the film.
The sound designer is the director in that piece, in a sense. We come back and we sit in front of the sound, the live sound, and we put our hand up when we think, this is a really good interaction. But all 4 of us put our hands up at the same time, and so it's really important that they keep some sort of dramatic structure going through and don't just switch about, otherwise that confuses the audience even more. So there's a real liveness to the sound mixing actually there.
And I would say that in a way, Super Nightshot is really quite an example for how process and product or result become really one. It's like the attempt, we are making a film, and it's the making of actually what you see, which is the film, at the same time, you know, it is kind of both. Yeah.
But it's almost seems like you have an approach to the audience that makes us aware of our role overall as an audience in again and again in all your performances somehow. This is also something quite similar, or it's getting close to what normally is called happenings and so on. But what do you think about how you deal with the audience, your way of acting with the audience? Do you listen to the audience in the way you listen to each other? What is this performative element with the audience?
I think there's one thing that happens with us, with the collective process, is that there are usually 7 of us, plus some guest performers. So there could be 10 people in the room who are learning the role for journeys through a piece. And for example, with Kitchen, you will spend as much time generating material and improvising on stage as you will sitting watching. So we kind of take it in turns to have maybe 5 people watching a small improvisation, and then we'll swap. And so we are very aware of how it feels to be the audience and what we want to do as the audience. So I think that's generally with almost everything we make, we work in this way.
So you rehearse the audience actually?
Yeah, but in a way...
You rehearse being the audience?
Yeah, we do. And we have tryouts, we all the way through, we'll probably do about 3 weeks of rehearsal, and then we invite a certain amount of people in to practice being audience.
And it depends really on what kind of piece it is. Like for example, the Super Night Shot, the practicing, of course, happened much more out in the street with the public. Whereas, you know, a piece like Room Service, we had to really do these tryouts a lot because it was more about the involvement of the audience. And
what
then
will
we
they
have
do?
to.
How far can we push them?
We really do invite test audiences over the process, and of course we listen to them and their experience and see what is too much. Very often we find out actually it's rarely too much. They can deal with so much more.
I think
sometimes I realise that we are quite conservative audience, and it's strange because I sort of hate audience interaction, and yet it's what we do, and so I think it's a real struggle sometimes, and I think you've got to be more gentle with. You've got to. So I think that's what I have a look. I want to be involved, but I want to know that I'm looked after. I want to know that I'm being respected. I want to know that there's reason for me to doing this. I'm not just doing it for a gimmick or, that this is, and that I will be getting some sort of, that by doing it, I'm experiencing it in a whole other way, and it's worth it, if you see what I mean.
But maybe at this time we should come back now to your question about the camera and the importance of this technology we put very often between us and the public, or between us and the audience. Because like with Super Night Shot, I think if we had imagined what we were going to do before the process, we would have all screamed and run away, and would have never done that without the aid of and the frame of the camera, because the camera is really it's almost like a license to try some things and to have a kind of frame together that you can be in a way that you wouldn't ever be without it, like going up to a stranger and asking him to spend the evening with you and listen to their stories and things like that. We wouldn't do that.
It's almost like you're using the camera as a mask.
Yeah,
the screen.
I think that's an interesting.
Yeah, I think it really is very liberating. But it also, what we were very aware of was that everybody is incredibly camera savvy, very camera aware. And we're all so used to filming our birthdays, weddings, babies, you know, every moment. It's even getting more and more and more and more. I mean, when we first were making this, it was literally with video cameras. Now everybody's holding a camera device. Most people have one on them all of the time. And we're all very used to videoing things. We're all very used, and
It's
people,
almost like we have an imaginary camera.
yeah, it's almost as if we're always on film. You know, oh, you know, how is this my good side? And what I wanted to say is that people seem to be able to reveal themselves on camera to us, to tell us stories, that I felt that if I were just sitting on a bus next to somebody, they would just think, how, you know, that wouldn't happen, that exchange wouldn't occur.
Is this something new in the culture, this kind of performative behavior?
It's we're really looking at it and interested by it. I think that there is a way that people feel another way of being once the camera's turned on.
Because if this is something genuinely new in a culture, it somehow will influence the acting as well, I guess. It has to, because it's a part of our behavior or mental.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, what we realize is that it's sort of a license to play, you know, and to step into something together, you know, knowing that, you know, it's not the total reality of what we are in now. It's kind of both. It's almost like both fiction and reality, that we are kind of, this moment is unplanned. We both didn't know that we would meet within that, but at the same time we enter some sort of fiction together, you know, but still using our real names, still using, you know, what the people come with, and, you know, having a real conversation at the same time. But at the same time we are entering, both knowing, here we are, you know, playing.
There's a moment in Kitchen that both Bear and I perform, because also how we work is that we all learn more than one part in the...
You switch off the parts. You could
well,
swap.
they're not each other's, they're ours, but we all learn, you know, like in Kitchen, for example, there are 4 roles, and we all know at least 2 of them, and swap them round. And that is just to make sure, because there's so much improvisation in the work, we want to try and make sure that there's always a different constellation, so you can't get comfortable. So when I enter the kitchen, I'm actually faced with somebody else that I haven't met in the kitchen for a while. So that actually means you can't get into a comfortable, oh, I know what we'll talk about, you know, because you think, oh God, what do we...
really never know.
Yeah, exactly. But what I was going to say was, do you want to talk about the kids? And how...
I just want us to kind of start to finish. We
Okay.
are over a little over time.
Oh,
But
yeah.
finish up your reasoning, please.
I just wanted to say that, you know, we don't really have roles. I would rather say we have paths, or, you know, tasks. And then everybody who plays that, who fulfills that task, does it in a very different way. That's why, kind of like, although the basic task, like here, the task of hero, you know, is played by, I don't know, 7 people or something, and they all do it very different. And then, of course, also what happens to them, the special circumstances make it very different every night. Sometimes they turn bad, sometimes they don't, sometimes they become a tragic, kind of funny hero, more like a clown, whatever. And everybody, although it's a given task, we all have our very different ways to deal with this. And this is, again, this thing of like, you know, are we ourselves? Well, yes, we are a version of ourselves. And it goes different ways with each of us doing this task.
Right. As one would say about other ways of acting as well. Should we do you have a short clip from Kitchen maybe? That because it's should I say what the thing is, or will it be shown? Because you're exchanging the audience become you, so you make the audience actually play you.
We replace ourselves one by one over the course of the evening with members of the audience that then really play us. It's a short clip again.
Thank you for coming, and welcome to Gob Squad's factory. It's 1965, and it's New York. This film that we're in is the essence of its time. What have we got, Sharon?
Well, Simon, we've got a table, a couple of chairs.
I think you've got it. It's the kitchen.
You want a coffee?
I like my coffee hot, strong, and black.